Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM, AM 630, WMAL.
7:07 on the Morning Majority. Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, Karen Henready in for Mary Catherine, who's still on her vacation. We understand she made it all the way. She made it to Kilimanjaro. She puked a couple of times, but now she's at the beach and it's all better. Yeah. We're very proud of her.
I reported that she puked. I better make sure that I read that correctly.
Did you get that right?
No, I'm pretty sure I did. I'm pretty sure I saw that in
I don't think we need all that kind of detail, but nonetheless, we're very happy that she made it. Good she's down, and we'll see her next week. Listen, we have Joe DiGenova, our legal analyst, on the line. You know, Joe is always, he always brings such clarity to these legal issues. And I want to start by just talking a little bit about a story that we stumbled across, Joe. I don't even know if you've heard about this story. We stumbled across it last week, and we thought it was very interesting and wondered how you would feel about it. It involved an Iowa cake maker. A couple comes in, happened to be a lesbian couple, comes in, and they want a cake made for their ceremony. They're getting married, and apparently that's under Iowa law is allowed. And the woman said, "Look, no disrespect. Appreciate you coming in, but I just don't think I can. My beliefs are such that I don't think I can make that cake for you." And they're very upset about it, of course. And there's some talk of that there might be some legal action. Does the woman who owns this little bakery have the right to say that? Or if under Iowa law these sort of unions are allowed, does she have to make the cake?
Well, she's a public accommodation under the law. In other words, she is open for business to the public. She could not deny the cake to a black couple or an interracial couple. And under that law of that state, that is a protected class, the lesbian couple. And she probably does not have the right to deny them service unless they were somehow, obnoxious or caused a disturbance, which they apparently did not.
Even if it goes against her religious beliefs. Because
I know.
What you have here is competing interests. On one side, her belief to believe what she wants to believe under her religion, and the other side, as you say, a protected class of people who say, "Oh, wait, you have to make the cake for us."
Yeah, well, I think under the law of that state, she's probably in a bind, and she probably has to be licensed by the health department to pass standards. So when all is said and done, she's governed by the law of the state, and she either has to do it or obviously she's going to have to pay some damages. I can understand it. I think it's it's part of where we are today in America, and people have to figure out how to live with that.
All right, we arrested this guy, Jose Pimentel, yesterday. 27-year-old, is born in the Dominican, but is a U.S. citizen. Apparently, he was inspired by Inspire magazine, Al-Qaeda's magazine, Anwar al-Awlaki's creation. What about the legalities of allowing that publication to continue? Is there anything you can do to stop that?
Well, the United States government has the power technologically to shut down anything at once. And in fact, part of our cyber warfare capacity involves the ability to do lots of stuff electronically, which is, you guys were talking about Stuxnet recently with the attack on the Iranian nuclear programs by getting into the laptops of the scientists. The answer is it would be an interesting question about which would make it to the Supreme Court. The United States might be able to make a national security war argument for shutting down access to that website, but the government is more interested actually in watching that website and seeing what it's saying and seeing with whom they're speaking to, because just between you and me and nobody else is listening to this, NSA has the capability to track communications from those websites, even though they tell everybody they can't. They can. And by the way, the arrest in New York, speaking of intelligence, was a fantastic triumph for the New York City Police Department under the leadership of Ray Kelly, the greatest police chief in America. And his intel department is run by a bunch of former CIA officers, and they are unbelievable. They have guys overseas in Europe from the NYPD. actually stationed in Europe and the Middle
that.
East gathering intelligence. It's a phenomenal operation out of New York.
I sort of wish Ray Kelly would someday be a national security, or be the Secretary of Homeland Security.
He'd be a great FBI director. Any new president, Republican or Democrat, would be wise to pick him. He is an amazing law enforcement officer.
By the way, you were over there. You were in Cairo, weren't you, recently?
Actually, we were in Morocco.
Oh, you're in Morocco.
And
okay.
This is a follow-up to the Chris Matthews tingly leg story.
Yeah.
And now he can't, all these Democrats are upset with Obama. One of the guys on our bike trip was a humongous Democrat fundraiser from Miami. And in the course of the trip, he told us how he did all this stuff for Obama in 2008, got Gloria Estefan to do a political fundraiser, which she never does. Didn't get a phone call after the election, didn't get invited to the White House. So last month, Axelrod comes down to visit him and says, we've been really bad about following up with our people after the election. We want to apologize. We'd like you to help us. Can you do it? And the guy said, "Niet, no.
Wow.
Go away. I'm done."
Well, that seems to be the trend. By the way, we're getting to have Doug Schoen on our show, I believe.
Yeah,
like
Doug Schoen has written a column this morning saying that Obama needs to just sort of hand it over to Hillary and bow out of the coming election.
It's going to happen.
Yeah,
but it's interesting that you're hearing voices like Doug Schoen and Pat Caddell say these things.
But this president has an ego the size of Mount Rushmore, and he's waiting for the chiseling to start. He's not going to drop out.
Do you get the sense that that particular donor would ever give to a Republican, or is it those donors are just going to hold on to their money?
Well, this guy was a very serious Democrat. I mean, but a conservative Democrat, a business person, a huge business person in the Miami area. And what was most interesting was the depth of his anger about being mistreated. And the arrogance with which he was treated, the way he was disposed of like something usable, and the depth of the anger was something I think that permeates a lot of people who have been shunned by the administration since their glorious victory. There's a lot of arrogance in this White House. Now, you'd never know it from reading the mainstream press. But boy, when you go out there and talk to people like this is ugly stuff.
All right. On the Penn State front, we all know that there were balls dropped galore from people who worked for Penn State. But what about prosecutors? If you go back to that 1998 case where it looked like he was on tape, or at least they had him on record as saying that he did shower with boys and that he was sorry about it. Why didn't they prosecute then back in 1998?
Because it was all about protecting Penn State. This entire story is about protecting Penn State, protecting Paterno, protecting the institution. They sacrificed a bunch of young boys in the name of college sports and a university. It is one of the most disgraceful sagas in American law enforcement history. The Pennsylvania prosecutors should all be investigated by the feds about what they didn't do. Now, they may have immunity as state prosecutors, but they can be forced to testify about what they did and didn't do. And I think they have a horrible story to tell. I'm really embarrassed as a former prosecutor to see what the Pennsylvania people didn't do. We talked about this last week. I told you that Pennsylvania is one of the most corrupt legal systems in the United States, and everything over the last week that I have seen written about the pathetic performance of their state police, many of whom, by the way, the higher-ups in the state police are former Penn State ball players.
Yeah, I know.
How about
so what do you think they're going to do?
All right, that DA that decided not to go forward with that case is now presumed dead, missing. Nobody knows where he is. They say he's dead, and his laptop was found in the Susquehanna River, and the hard drive was, he made it so no one could get into it. Have you heard anything ever about Ray Gregar and his disappearance in 2005?
No. Absolutely not. Not until now. And it is quite remarkable that it did have. Obviously, this was a guy who had a conscience problem of immense proportions as a result of the victims, and probably met some of the victims at the time, and was probably told not to bring charges. This is going to explode because the feds are going to get into this. There's going to be a federal grand jury that the FBI is already investigating, trying to track down the victims. Yeah. And for the university, there's never going to be an end to this because the civil liability is going to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah. Ask around about Gregar, if you could, to all the people that you talk to, because I know you know a lot of different people. That case just fascinates me, that this guy could just disappear.
It may be, actually, Brian, it may be the key to the whole thing.
Yeah. All right, Joe. Great to talk to you.